So welcome, everyone. My name is Scott Steady. I've been appointed as the special magistrate today for this process. A little background on the process. This is a statutory process that the Florida legislature enacted a number of years ago. Some people call it an alternative to litigation. And there's really two parts of the process, and we're going to go forward with the first part today, and that is mediation. I'm basically a facilitator, acting as a mediator between the two parties, the developer, petitioner, and the city, to consider, if there's some alternative to what City Council denied. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, from that perspective, really the two parties here are the developer and the city. A number of you have received notice, and I think you're lined up along the front here. The way the process works is if there is a potential option that would go back to City Council, at that point you get to discuss that option, give your objections, your observations. I mean, the reason for that is, I think, pretty obvious. If there's no meeting of the minds, or when I say meeting of the minds, that's really incorrect. If the staff doesn't feel that the proposal is worth taking back or has, again, words that doesn't merit coming back to City Council, there's really no reason to have people discuss it, because there's no reason to do that. So you just bear with us, be patient. I mean, the bottom line is the first part of the process is simply the developer petitioner proposing something, having discussions, and then again, if there looks like there's something that may have merit to go back to City Council, then we'd open it up. I'll open it up to the people that have qualified to discuss it. I need to make it clear, no matter what's discussed today, it has to go back to City Council. City Council has the same discretion to review it, deny it. Frankly, it comes back through this process, but it's basically re-noticed, assuming something goes back to them. Don't want to let you, give you any indication that's going to happen. But I want to make it clear that if it goes back to City Council, it's re-noticed, and it's basically a new hearing. So again, this is the mediation part of the process. And the second part of the process is where I'd actually sit as more of a hearing officer and make a recommendation to City Council. But that's not today. Today is simply the mediation. We may, given this is mediation, we may break out. I may meet with the developer petitioner separately. I may meet with the city separately as well, or at the same time. Those will be private between myself and those parties. Otherwise, everything is done here in front of everyone today. So with that, let me just check my notes here. Okay, what I'd like first is, could you introduce yourselves first, and then we'll go from there. Jake, if you'd introduce yourself.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Jake Kramer with Stearns Weaver Miller. I'm the attorney for the applicant in this rezoning and this polluter mediation.
Good afternoon. I'm Punit Shah. I'm the Chief Executive of Liberty Group, and we are the petitioner.
I'm Mickey Jacob. I'm with Goodwin Mills Kaywood, and I'm the architect on the project.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Neubauer. I'm an attorney at Stearns Weaver representing the applicant petitioner.
Okay, Kate, if you would.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Kate Wells, Chief Assistant City Attorney, and I may look familiar to some of you. I attended the City Council hearing when this was considered earlier in the year.
Good afternoon. Ursula Richardson, Chief Assistant of Litigation for the City of Tampa.
Good afternoon. Abby Feely, Deputy Administrator of Development and Growth Management for the City of Tampa.
I'm Susan Johnson, City of Tampa Subdivision Coordinator.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Susan Johnson, City of Tampa Subdivision Coordinator.
Annie Barnes, Urban Planner 2 with the City of Tampa.
Jennifer Malone, I'm with the Hillsborough County Planning Commission. I'm an executive planner, the City of Tampa liaison. I wrote the report and I was at the Tampa City Council hearing for this case.
Okay, great. So one last thing, there's sign-up sheets. I sent a sign-up sheet for the general public in the back, if you would sign that up, and then there should be a sign-up sheet for the individuals on the front row there, if you'd all sign up. And again, just so everyone understands, the individuals that are on the front that have name tags, they qualified under the statute to receive notice, mostly either a budding property owner or you participated at the city council meeting, so that, again, if there is some avenue or some proposal that's going to go back to city council, you'll have an opportunity to address that. But at this point, Jake, we need to hear from you, so go ahead.
Sure, Scott. So again, Jake Kramer at Stearns Weaver. As you mentioned, Scott, we're here really today to discuss a resolution to City Council's denial of the upscale hotel that my client proposed on Harbour Island. I realize this format may be a little awkward. It's not as intimate, frankly, as mediations normally are. But we'll do our best. We're here to try to find a way to resolve this, and that means, in my mind and Mr. Shaw's mind, not only with the city, but also with the public, and frankly, some of the homeowners associations that we have tried time and time again to engage with in a productive way, and have mostly been rebuffed. There are members of the public here that I see that have had conversations with us, and we appreciate that. I mention that because, again, we're here to resolve this. We heard concerns at the city council meeting from the city council, from the public, and we've spent essentially the last couple of months yet again redesigning the project. We started at the ground level and redesigned the entire project. I wanted to frame sort of where we're at procedurally, so I think that's important for people to understand. Obviously, we disagree with the city council's decision, and because of that, we filed a lawsuit. We filed a writ of certiorari challenging that decision. We agreed with the city to essentially put that on hold so that we could focus on this proceeding and try to come to a resolution short of litigation. Since that time, we've also filed a demand under the Burt-Harris Act. We provided the city with an appraisal showing that we've been damaged at least $6.6 million by the city's decision. And again, I'm just stating the facts of where we are procedurally. We would like to come to a resolution today, and if we're not able to, then we'll obviously proceed with those lawsuits and seek either the damages or requesting an approval of what we presented to City Council. But again, we're here to try to find a resolution today. I've prepared a presentation. Normally at a mediation, I wouldn't go into this level of detail, but since there are some folks here that weren't at the City Council hearing, I wanted to be able to explain where we came from to be able to contrast that with the proposal we're prepared to make today. But before I do that, Scott, if it's okay with you, my client would like to say a few words.
Good afternoon. I know many of you and see familiar faces out there, but by means of background, so I've been in Tampa for 22 years now. I've lived on Harbour Island for 12. My parents have lived there for 5 years. And so we've owned multiple homes there. I'm one of the owners of The Point, where Jackson's and American Social are. So I'm very vested in Harbour Island, and I'm very vested in enhancing my neighborhood and our community. As I've demonstrated many, many times successfully in the past, including here locally in Tampa with the Aloft Hotel, which is on the corner of Kennedy and Ashley, along with the dual-branded Hilton Hotel and Starbucks on the corner of Kennedy and Meridian. All of those have had positive impacts on their neighborhoods. The residents have been exuberant about the new amenity They've proven to be upscale, and they support our convention center, this building, which is expanding. They support Amalie Arena, Tampa General Hospital, and of course, all of the great development that's happening in Tampa. We're on the cusp of becoming a world-class city. It's been years and years in the making. A hotel like this will add to our offering and allow us to market to a broader base of travelers that want to visit the Tampa. So I'm here because I believe passionately about doing this project. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put all this effort, more than a year of going back and forth with the various associations and city council. If it didn't mean a great deal to me, I would have just given up months ago. And I'm here because I'm hopeful that we can find a way to move forward and find an amicable resolution. Thank you.
So again, I just want to, I'm going to run through this presentation, help frame the issues of what we see are the issues and what we've done over the past couple of months. Now, some of these slides will be familiar to those of you who were at City Council. At this point, we've been working on this project for about 2 years from when we first started the planning and design. The site is an upscale, well, excuse me, the site is an obsolete bank building now. At some point in time in the very near future, whether we succeed with this proposal or with something else, this site will be redeveloped. It's an obsolete building. It was one of the original structures built on Harbour Island. It was actually the original sales center for the island and was converted to other uses over time. And really its time has come to redevelop it in some fashion. We're in the north neighborhood of Harbour Island, very close to a similar use, right? The Westin Hotel, a couple blocks away. As one of the city council members recognized at the hearing, we're really in sort of the public space of the island. The island is divided in two between a public space north of the gates, north of the gated community, and then south of the gated community, which is really a private space. I can't tell you what it looks like because I'm not actually allowed to even walk into that space. From a future land use perspective, the site it's in the highest future land use in the city other than the central business district. It's a comparable density and intensity to Channelside. And the comprehensive plan is very, very clear that this is supposed to be a very intense, very dense land use category. That's the plan that, whether we like it or not, we're stuck with. This is what City Council approved many years ago. And the category contemplates high-rise buildings up to 24 stories. It allows an intensity of 3.5 FAR, but because we're in the CBD periphery, there's the potential to actually double that under the future land use. The zoning, again, the property today is zoned for office and bank uses for the specific structure that's on the property. The history of that zoning was essentially the property owner in the past had some doubts about whether the uses that were entitled at the time would allow for that kind of a drive-through use, and so that was the only reason really that a PD was needed for this particular property historically. The rest of the zoning around the site, essentially the rest of the island, allows for, including the athletic club, allows for structures up to 158 feet to be built. The property is within a DRI, actually all of Harbour Island, many of you know, is within a DRI. What that means is essentially that under state review and the input of many state and regional agencies, including the city many years ago, this island was master planned for a purpose, and the entitlements associated with that DRI, it has only been roughly 50% built out compared to what's actually been approved on the island as a whole. This is a photo of the site. Again, the island was planned and built out over the last 30 years. So you have these two distinct neighborhoods. This picture, I think, really helps hit home that if anything is incompatible on the island at this point in time, it's this obsolete bank building, right, next to this canyon of very large towers that are right next door. And as those of you who are planners know, compatibility doesn't mean the same as. Compatibility means really we have to take into context the entire island and see what land uses are there and what land uses can coexist in a stable fashion over time. And what I'd suggest is there's an island, there's a hotel blocks away. There are many towers on the island taller than the building we proposed at council and certainly what we're going to present today. There's even some fairly tall buildings in the private space within the gated community. And this is nothing new in Tampa, right? Any of us who've driven down Bayshore see this every day. Very, very tall towers that coexist quite well with low and medium density residential right next door. And in much closer proximity than what we're proposing. Again, you can see here the tall condominium that's in the private space within the gated community, much closer to residential structures than what we're proposing. So we're not proposing anything that's out of context with what's already on the island today. So before I turn it over to our architect to describe the proposal, I'm sure everyone's wondering what are we proposing. I just wanted to kind of go back to square one and show theoretically what are the maximums allowed under the comprehensive plan for this site. Our initial application, again, over a year and a half ago at this point, what we presented to City Council and what Mickey is going to be describing to you. Again, we have, through this process, I realize we all probably don't agree with this, but we have tried to listen to the community. We have substantially reduced what we're proposing, even going to City Council, and that was as a direct result of 2 community meetings. We had an online information session, and then we had a very well-attended community meeting, and we took all that feedback after the second community meeting and redesigned the site the first time. And so, we've done that again. We've removed, we're proposing to, again, we started at 15 levels. We requested 12 from City Council, and the current proposal is for a hotel 10 levels. We've reduced the number of guest rooms or keys by 5, and we've reduced the parking. One of the concerns that we heard at City Council and in the community meeting was that we were providing too much parking. Right? There were concerns that from the community that there would be all of this parking that wouldn't be used by the hotel, and that potentially that would attract additional people onto the island that weren't there for the use of the hotel. And it would sort of become this public parking space that wasn't appropriate for the island, so we've reduced the parking. And one of the effects of that is that when we went to City Council, pretty unusually for those of you who are there watching petitions day in and day out, is that we weren't requesting a single waiver. That happens about once a month at City Council, that a project goes forward without any waivers. And we were doing that because we wanted to follow the code as strictly as possible. So the balance here is, we heard loud and clear at City Council that folks thought the hotel that we were proposing was too tall. We didn't agree with that, but we took the feedback, and we got creative with design and were able to remove a couple of parking levels. The effect of that is that we would be requesting a small waiver of parking to be able to get there. We've had Randy Cohen, our transportation consultant, review what we're proposing, and he believes it's well within the limits of recently proposed hotels that have been approved by City Council, that waiver. And you know, if we were in just a few blocks away in the CBD today, we wouldn't need a waiver, especially with the, you know, and that's not even, you know, including the proposal that City Council is going to be taking up soon, I think tomorrow actually, to reduce parking requirements in the CBD even more. So I think that's an acknowledgement City Council understands we really have a pretty outdated parking code. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our architect to walk you through some visuals of what we're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake, and good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Mickey Jacob with Goodwin Mills Kaywood, an architecture firm here in Tampa. I've been practicing here for 41 years in the city, and so I'm sure we've had many buildings that you all might be familiar with. So first, what I want to do is show, this was the site plan presented to City Council. And one of the things that we had talked about then and continue to put into our design is really looking at the streetscape, because this building's on, you know, it's the gateway prominent corner, and we really wanted to create a streetscape experience for pedestrians and a very safe streetscape experience with wider sidewalks, with interaction with seating areas. And as we went back after City Council and rethought some of the things that we are doing there, and a couple other things that are building operational issues as well. And so one of them was we really looked hard at creating the ground floor above the floodplain. And that way we had a greater opportunity for us to use that ground floor however we wanted to, where previously we were under the floodplain and it limited what use could go in there. So we've done that now, which has created a couple things. One is, if you look at the sort of the top to the left, which would be Knights Run Avenue, you can see that we've pulled the entry into the building back and created a grand staircase up into that part of the building, which also will allow for some seating areas. We've changed the entry into the hotel lobby. So as you come up into the porte cochere, off a Knights Run and pull in under the canopy of the building, we've created a handicap accessible entry to get up to that level of the floor, along with a stairway that goes in. And it actually, when we looked at it from an operational and a queuing standpoint, it gives us a much better use of that space in terms of queuing for cars as guests are coming in and leaving, being dropped off. We've continued to look at the facade of the building, and that whole ground level facade will be glass, and you'll see it in our elevations here in a minute, because we wanted to maintain the transparency of the building and pull down that scale with canopies to make it much more desirable for the pedestrian experience. As you can see, one of the things we really worked hard on was to really look at how we created the, this is the old one, right, Jake? Yeah, sorry, this is the old one, the plan that was presented to City Council. As you can see, one of the original ideas here was to, one, create a buffer from the traffic, which the city requires us to do, and two, create some wide sidewalks to really create a better and safer pedestrian experience. And I think we talked about how that creates people running into each other. I like to call it the unintended social interactions and collisions that we have with your neighbors and build relationships in the neighborhood itself. We really worked hard on the loading dock to create a loading dock that was underneath the canopy of the building and far into the building, so any truck activity in there would be outside of, would be inside the building and not outside in the street, nor in the driveway that enters the site by the Harbour Island Athletic Club. So this is, as you can see, the new entry at the front, which creates some really cool sitting areas. Those sitting areas would be elevated, acting as a front porch for the building itself, completely underneath the canopy and the overhang of the building. And then you can see how we've created a different, a better and longer sequence of car queuing as you come in to where the front entry into the lobby of the hotel would be where you can see that kind of angled stair. And then outside of it to the right, where the parking is, that would be, again, what we had before is the intention of any kind of pickup area for guests to either arrive or depart. You can see how the loading dock continues to be well underneath the canopy and into the building, so any delivery vehicles or trucks that are in there will go completely within that loading dock area, and there's a roll-down door there, and that loading dock is deep enough for us to be able to close that door and screen anything that's going on in there, even during business hours and when we have operational deliveries. We've continued to maintain the sidewalk access and the pedestrian experience, and we've created canopies and really tried to scale that building down. The whole idea here is to really look at the facade and create a pedestrian scale at the streetscape itself. So this would be the north elevation. This would be standing on Knights Run Avenue and looking at the building itself. We've simplified the facade a little bit, and some of that is from scale and materials. As Jake had mentioned, we've reduced the parking to 3 levels and the guest floors to 5 levels. And one of the reasons that is the scale of the building itself. So there's 2 different scales we were looking at. One is the total scale and volume of the building as it sits on the site, and then as the building tiers up, how does it create different levels that creates different experiences. You can see the horizontal canopies that we have down on the streetscape itself that really pulls that facade down, and we really want to create better experiences, and then this becomes a much grander entry into the building from the street itself because we wanted to really have a front door at Knights Run itself. What we're going to do here is we're going to show a few of the former three-dimensional dropped in on Google Earth to give you an idea of the scale. This was the original proposal that we had a while back. You can see the scale of that building that we originally had, and then as we really looked at operationally what could do, this was the building itself that was presented at City Council. So you can kind of see how that works in terms of the scale, especially across the street with the office building itself and how it's pulled back away from the neighborhood along Knights Run and then along South Harbour Island Boulevard at that corner, and really creating a vertical element that becomes a really significant gateway icon onto Harbour Island as you're coming southbound on South Harbour Island Boulevard across the bridge and down to the stop sign at Knights Run. And now this is the latest design that we have, so you can see how we've simplified the design. I think it's a lot more elegant, and we've really focused down again on the streetscape itself. This is the east elevation, so this would be looking at the main entry into the hotel as if you were standing adjacent to the tennis courts at the athletic club. You can see what we've created, again, that we had before, this kind of grand entry to it itself, but we've created a little more transparency there than we had before because we wanted to be able to see through into that and create this really inviting space where our guests would be coming in and out, and the neighborhood to come in and use some of the amenities for the building. Here's kind of the east side as we've dropped it down to see how it connects into the neighborhood. Obviously, the original design. This was the City Council design. You can see how one of the things we tried to do is this created a little more verticality in terms of the way the materials were put onto the building. So they have vertical elements. So what we've done really is made that a little more horizontal and really kind of give the building a different look in terms of the volume of the building and how we wanted to interact into the community. And quite frankly, the simplification of the facade we think really works in terms of the context of what we have going on across the street and really not making it so much as an icon of a building itself, but really trying to get back into how we really pull that scale down to the streetscape. This would be the west elevation around South Harbour Island Boulevard. Again, we have a horizontal canopy that goes all the way across the facade of the building that will be all glass down at the bottom. But it will not be transparent glass. It's got to be spandrel at that point. It is where the ramp up into the parking garage goes. But what we wanted to do was just create a space there that was really wide, more inviting, gives people a safe opportunity to interact and walk and be part of the neighborhood. We have maintained the existing Harbour Island sign that's there, the big brick wall that's part of the sign. With that, certainly understand the importance of that and want to work with the neighborhood in terms of, is that something they want to continue to have, which is fine, or do we want to create a new opportunity there for signage onto Harbour Island? Again, as you look at the top of the parking garage, that will be where the pool deck is, where it was before. The building is L-shaped. We work really hard on the hotel room floors to create more density of rooms on the floor, which allowed us to remove one story off of the hotel room levels of the building itself. Here's, again, the old, looking from the south up to the building. On Harbour Island, the original design, certainly the one that we did at City Council, you can now see the L shape on how that works from a scale standpoint, and now what we're doing in terms of the new design itself. Like any project, this project is evolving and has evolved, and over the years of doing building design, we always know that as we go forward, we continue to make improvements that we think make our buildings better and more respected of the neighborhoods that they live in. This is the south side, so this is the service entry. If you see down on the bottom left where our service vehicles would enter. We've also created much more transparency there itself, so you can see the cars coming in. We believe it's a much safer application for that side. You can see on top of the parking garage where the pool would look out towards the south, and how we created some really cool glass corners for the rooms, which obviously give those rooms that are on the corner a much higher profile, and gives options, different options for rooms and room rates for our operator and for Mr. Shaw. So this kind of looks from the southeast towards the building itself. Again, you can see what the original building looks like scale. And this was our building that we presented at City Council. And you see the facade with the verticality that we created with this at the time, and now you can see how we've really changed the horizontal facade to that to create, I think, a simpler but more elegant look for the building itself. One of the things, and I know you've seen this before if you were at City Council, that we're really looking at designing an elegant interior to this that really is a space that we're going to be all proud of in our neighborhood, because we want it to be of that level of elegance in terms of the service of the building and what it does in the public spaces of the building as we come in. Our intent is to really make this one of the cornerstone hotels in downtown Tampa, and really something that I think is reflective of the elegance and what Harbour Island represents as a community itself. And that ends my portion. Jake?
Thanks. So that's our presentation, that's our proposal, and we'll take it wherever you want to from here. If you'd rather have breakout sessions, or if you have questions, or the city has questions.
Well, I have a question first. So what is the parking waiver? What's the waiver? What are you going from to? Like, is it? So you're going from 158 to 153 to 115.
Right, so, down to, so 115, so it'd be a parking, the request would be a reduction of 38 spaces, or about 24.8%.
And obviously Randy would say current hotels with Ubers and all that, that's what makes sense these days, especially the nature of this hotel.
Right.
And obviously he'd submit a report that would say that.
He has, and his analysis is that most hotels these days are requesting waivers of 18 to 25%, somewhere in that range.
Right. Kate, do you want to ask questions now, or do you want to meet and discuss this? What would you like to do?
You know, typically, we do an initial presentation so that members of the
Right.
public especially can understand the city's role in the mediation. And some of it may be duplicative of what you have mentioned and what Jake mentioned, but I think it's worth just going there one more time.
Yep.
Partly because with other mediations that we've been involved with, sometimes the city's role has been criticized. And so I want to make it clear that when we're participating today, the goal today is not to defend city council's decision as if we were in a court of law. It's already been mentioned that the purpose is a mediation. So typically if we were in court, we'd be looking at whether council's decision was based on competent and substantial evidence, whether council followed the essential requirements of the law and allowed due process. And if we were to focus on that today, we wouldn't get very far in looking at the ability to mediate this if it's possible to come back to council with an alternative site plan than that which was denied by council earlier this year. So I just wanted to emphasize that. It's important to understand the city's role. And to the extent that we're unsuccessful in bringing a settlement back to council, or if we are successful in agreeing on a settlement, yet council doesn't approve it, then we'll deal with those other issues that I mentioned when the litigation ensues. But just a couple other things. When council saw this back on May 12th, the decision to deny was a vote of 4-2. And when I went back and looked at council's transcript and what I highlighted in our response to the request for review, in council I thought focused on two key areas when they denied this application. And the first was the failure to establish compatibility with the comprehensive plan. Although the RMU 100 future land use category allows consideration of the application, council found that the proposed use and intensity of development was not compatible with the existing pattern of development south of Knights Run. There was a lot of discussion as to the development pattern north of Knights Run Avenue and south of Knights Run Avenue. So they were focusing on that with respect to the application's compatibility with the city's comprehensive plan. And council also focused on and found that there was a failure to comply with section 27-136 of the Land Development Code, which is entitled The Purpose of a Site Plan Control District. Council found that the hotel project did not promote or encourage development appropriate in location, character, and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. Council cited to the incompatibility of the proposed use with the surrounding built environment and the interaction of reasonably anticipated hotel traffic with the existing residential traffic. So with those 2 points, that is what the city is going to be focusing on in the way of how this revised site plan addresses that basis for denial. So it's, I could go into much more detail about council's decision and the evidence that was presented at the hearing. But for those of you that were there, you know what was presented. Many of you presented that evidence. So I just wanted to confirm for the record our role today and to let you know what we're going to be focusing on. I'm assuming we'll go out to a breakout room and look at Liberty's proposal. And we'll be focusing on how the revised plan, the revised elevations are responsive to the basis for denial. Thank you.
So Kate, at this point, is there any general questions on the plan, or do you want to?
One, I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to confirm this. And Jake, as you were going through a lot of the aerials, and you had an area that was hash marked. Am I correct in understanding that that presents the area south of the gates? Was that the intent?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And there were I noticed on the slides there are, I think it was two buildings south of the athletic facility. And you had broken out the height of the buildings in 3 general areas, but can you confirm the height of those buildings?
They're 8 stories.
Thank you. That's it for me, but I don't know if Abby and others have questions.
Slide 23 represents the new building, the west elevation, and it is showing that, my eyes are getting old, it's showing 109, is that 109 feet 3 inches to the top of roof?
Yes, that's right.
Those areas projecting above the roof line, those are, I'm assuming, mechanical, parapet screening. There's no usable area on the roof, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Jacobs, could you please confirm that you believe those areas do not consume more than 20% of the roof area?
Yes, I can confirm that. Those are, it's an elevator overrun and the stair overruns are what you're seeing. You're talking about the projections coming up off the top of the horizontal roof line. That would be the top of the room floors, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that would be less, that would fall within that.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I was looking, I'm just going to pull up the definition of height that is in the zoning code. And it allows for projections to exceed the roof as long as they do not consume more than 20% of the roof area. Therefore, when I look at this, your building height is 109 feet, 3 inches.
Okay.
It's,
I'd agree with that, yes. We were looking at it strictly.
It's not 121.3.
No,
Those
we were looking.
projections go up to 121.3.
Correct, and we were looking at just the top of the projections when we were doing that to make sure there was no confusion, that we didn't want to have anything that was, again, confusing anybody with it. But yes, you're correct in that assessment based on the way the code reads.
Also, I just had one more point of clarification. Also on that elevation, you show vehicles, looks like a gray vehicle toward the front, although on the site plan, there is no vehicle maneuvering on the property on that west side. That is enlarged sidewalk, is that correct?
Yeah, that would be kind of trying to show the scale of the vehicle going down the street, so that'd be the vehicle intended to show it on South Harbor Island Boulevard.
And the other vehicle, which is shown behind the glass, is what would be occurring internal to the building behind the facade. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just one clarification to my question about the 2 buildings that are south of the athletic facility. I kind of overheard some members of the public saying that it was 7 stories, not 8 stories. So I don't need an answer now, but if we could just confirm that for the record, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
So Kate, the city doesn't have anything else right now?
You do not.
Jake, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to go into a breakout session where the city is going to meet and they're going to meet in separate rooms. I can go between them, but everyone else can take a break. So we will start, do we think we need 30 minutes? 30 minutes? Since we have a large group here, I'd like to keep, so we'll be back no later than 2:15. I think we had a productive session, but I know the city had some questions about the circulation. So I asked for the newest site plan to be put up there, and there it is. So Kate, you want to follow up?
Thank you. So, one of the reasons council denied the application originally was the testimony with respect to the circulation of the hotel traffic with the resident traffic. I think it's one of the gates right there at South Harbor Island Boulevard, and just the closeness of the gate with I guess it's the easement area that provides access to this site that is shared with the athletic facility. Thank you. Thank you. So when we were looking at how the site plan has been revised and then just looking at the circulation, we were wondering the extent to which the access, the guest access into the hotel off of South Harbor Island Boulevard can be limited or reduced, recognizing that if on the southern ingress and egress points, if those were egress only, and the traffic then from the hotel coming out, you go to the right, then it's not impacting the residential traffic going behind the gate. So we don't know the extent to which you have the ability to look at circulation within the site or signage, but it would be helpful to have conversation over how that site works so that hopefully we're minimizing the interference or, you know, the hotel traffic with the residential traffic.
Yeah, so a couple of comments. Let's start, Mickey, with, first I'd like to get him to describe, because he has given this some thought. We heard that at council as well. So I want to get him to describe in terms of the design, how we have tried to encourage entrance from Knights Run Avenue as the primary entrance.
So from the beginning of the design, it was always our intent to have inbound hotel traffic enter the site from Knights Run Boulevard. Mr. Steady, would it be okay if I went up to the screen just to illustrate?
Except we got to speak, how about I'll do Carol?
Can I use my football coach voice?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me know if you can't hear me. I'm up at the screen just so I just want to make sure it's clear what our intent was. Very good. Okay, and forgive me if I stand in front of the screen a little bit, but the intent of this design and the way we sited the hotel and the way we created the entrance to the hotel, it has been our intent to create one-way traffic in and out as much as possible. But the whole operational side is that we would want hotel guests to come here as they're coming down and in on Knights Run Avenue and come down and into the valet. You would drop off valet here, the valet would take the car and go up. When the valet comes out, the valet will take their car, come down, and again pick people up. And as I'm sure most of you are fairly familiar with valets. Valets operate strictly at one-way traffic in when you're picking up and dropping off on valet of any event or areas that have valet. That is the intent of what our design is to force that traffic to come in that way. Now, obviously, you can't control all people all the time, but we've also discussed how we would create signage at the hotel and directional signage to make sure that people knew that that was the ingress into the hotel. So as we came in and dropped off here and then continued that traffic. So that's been the intent from the start. It's never, ever that we wanted any of the ingress into the site coming off of South Harbor Island Boulevard.
So where, tell me signage, where would you put signage?
So we would have signage up here in the corner and then certainly in this area right here, so that as you're coming down the street, it would be clear as to where we would want you to enter the site. And we'd look at, certainly with our consultants, on how we would design that to both meet the aesthetic nature and the directional, make it very easy directionally on how we'd want to do that.
Mickey, can you talk a little bit then about the two full drives that are at the south end? Because if everything's circulating the other way, the one just to the west,
Is this?
That, yes, is that?
So
what is
that
And
is
then
strictly-
And then to the one on the east.
So this is the entry into the garage for vehicles, right?
Yeah.
This here, that's the service entrance. So that would strictly be for service trucks only to come in, maneuver, and then back into the service. So either the trucks would come down here and maneuver and back in, or in some options, they would come in, maneuver, and back in, and then come back out. But this entry into the site and the building was strictly designed for service vehicles only.
It's not under ramp though, correct?
Pardon me?
It's not under ramp.
No, it's not.
Okay.
So, yeah, because this is all in the same grade coming in, right, and backing into that. We haven't figured out the details of the dock yet, but certainly the intent is it's all on one level, and those service vehicles would come in. And we anticipate, I think, Punit, that based on your hotel operations, that service vehicles are typically once a week, and then you'd have obviously the solid waste situation we'd have with city trucks coming in with solid waste, which we'd make sure we met all those criteria.
Can you speak then to that full access on the east and who that serves? There's another one there on the east.
Mickey, I can, and you can talk about operationally, but the athletic club has an easement that covers the southeastern entrance, as well as they have the right to use certain parking spaces on the ground level. And so we would need, at the very least, we would have to service their needs. So I think it would probably need to be full access, but I think there's ways we could use signage to, to help discourage that. I mean, we would also be, I think, open to, I don't know if this would be a possibility to the city, but if there are ways that we could get signage to the north of that intersection, showing that the hotel entrance is on Knights Run, then, again, I guess we probably need to talk to Right Away about that, but, we would be all in favor of that if it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, our intent is to make it as easy as possible for the guests to come in and go in the right way, and then it becomes very efficient in terms of the operations of getting in and out of the site and dropping off.
Jake, just to make it clear, that what you just said was that it would be signage north of the intersection with Knights Run. So it would be.
Well, he was saying he would have to get with the
Right,
city,
because
because
it's
that
the
would
city.
be like a
Right.
right-of-way sign or
Right.
something that would go before the stop sign at Knights Run
Right.
that would indicate hotel entrance or whatever it would be. We would have to see. I mean, typically, there are some directional signs on the island. I don't know that there are any of that type at this time, but we would have to see what that would be.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, ma'am, if you ask a question, everyone can ask a question, so just hold off. I know it's tough, but go ahead. Go ahead. Is there anything else? for me?
While I'm up? Okay, thank you.
Kate, does the city have a position on the proposal?
I think with the reduction in height and the further clarification about how height is defined under our code, and the allowable encroachments under up to 20% of the rooftop space, and then with this clarification on the access, conceptually, this is a plan that we could bring back to City Council for consideration. Just want to clarify that it would still be required to go through DRC review as the original rezoning did, so that each of the city departments may comment on their areas of responsibility. And with respect to the parking waiver that is being requested, the city's support for this project should not be interpreted by anyone as agreeing that you've met your burden of proof with respect to the parking waiver. That is still a burden that remains with with the applicant and would have to be satisfied to council's satisfaction, said that twice, but would have to be addressed to council's satisfaction with respect to your burden of proof with respect to the waiver criteria. But conceptually, this is a revised plan that we would bring back to council for consideration.
Okay. So does everyone understand that? At this point, what the staff is saying is that they're going to bring this back to city council for consideration. So at this point, I definitely want to open the floor up for people on the, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just, I think it may help the discussion if maybe you or Ms. Wells could just describe how the process would work from here if something were taken back to city council in terms of how many hearings and that sort of thing, just so they understand.
Well, I'll say first, I would write an order at the conclusion of this saying this is the plan that we've taken back to city council essentially. So the only involvement I have is basically articulate what will happen today. At that point, then it goes into the city's typical process, which Kate, if you describe, please.
Thank you. So it would still be required to go through the Development Review Committee as any other rezoning application, and all like natural resources, transportation, all of the other city departments would review this for consistency with those regulations under their jurisdiction. While that is going on, we would process a resolution with City Council scheduling a public hearing, and it's the same type of public hearing that occurred on May 12th. And the applicant would also be required to notice that hearing as they did the original rezoning. In the event that council is receptive to settling the litigation through this mediated settlement, everyone is still required to go through the rezoning hearing process, because any settlement would result in the rezoning of the property. So the hearing that you participated in on May 12th, it's the same type of hearing. The applicant would have to, first we would present the settlement, identify what is different about it, and the city would explain why it's supportive of bringing this revised site plan for council's consideration. Burden would still be with the applicant, as I mentioned, with respect to the parking waiver that is going to be requested. And council would consider this as it would any other rezoning application, and members of the public would have an opportunity to participate, and that's where your 3 minutes typically come into play. Participation at that hearing will not be limited to those that attended and participated on May 12th. It opens it up back up again. So anyone within the notice area or beyond the notice area would have the opportunity to address council on the revised site plan. If the settlement is accepted by council, and the rezoning is then approved and the rezoning ordinance placed on first reading, there would still be a second public hearing, as there are in every other rezoning application, that would be scheduled generally about 3 weeks out. At this point, it's not possible for me to provide possible dates to bring this back to council, but we'll take a look at the schedule, taking into consideration the turnaround time staff would need to meet as the DRC and prepare their comments. But folks would know about the date, because we would process a resolution setting the hearing date, and then, of course, the notice that would go out to folks within the notice area, as well as posting signs on the property with the new hearing date. So I don't know if there's anything else I can add to that.
No, I think that was complete. Sir, I'll go right to left on this, along this table. Go ahead. You want, could we have the, well, we should get it on. Let's have the, so everyone can hear.
I know this is just.
Is it on?
Is it on?
No, there's a button there, just push it up.
I know this, may go to city council, but I had a question about the drawing that's
Sure.
up there. Are
That's-
you saying, it's that from the east side of the building, off Knights Road, is where the trucks, delivery trucks, trash trucks, and so forth would come through there, come around, and then into and under the building? Is that,
I don't think
what they're
that's
saying?
Mickey said.
are
Mickey, would you get up
are
there
you are
again?
you saying they would come down Harbor Island Boulevard and then in?
We would have to work with, I think solid waste is the big issue there because those are
Right.
bigger trucks. So we would work with the city in terms of what the access would be for solid waste. But that's, that pickup is, I don't know.
Well,
How often you
I-
have solid waste pickup at hotels?
Our management company told us it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
So-
it's once a week, maybe twice a week
Well,
at
but
the
that
most,
would
but-
be, it's okay to leave that as an open question to go to the city council? Because that road on the east side, Harbor Island Boulevard, there's no trucks that come in that way. That gate, there's no trucks allowed to come in that way. So you're saying you're going to bring trucks into the road, and I guess this is to the city too. Is it an open question that you're just going to let it, you would recommend that the city council review this even though it's already a problem?
Can I clarify?
right?
There are trucks that go there now to the Harbor Island Athletic Club. There are trucks that service there. Currently, they have solid waste service there.
And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the main focus is to get the hotel traffic coming through there, but I'm going to say it's not going to be prohibited that service trucks will be coming down this road here. But you're going to have to deal with solid waste to determine it for sure before city council. That would be established before city council, would it not? Where the solid waste would be, would that?
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I understand your question.
Would that be done before, that's all?
That's part of the development review committee process. Solid waste will review this. I would highly suggest, and typically an applicant would provide an auto turn showing how the truck is coming to the site, how it is maneuvering onto the site, and then how it is leaving the site, so that we could see that as part of the review process. There is not currently anything in code that prohibits solid waste coming from that street to this site. So if it functions per standards, then it would be permitted to do so.
Okay, because it was discussed before, that's the area that backs up cars all the way back past Knights Road, so then you're going to put trucks in there.
And that was part of my question, because I wasn't sure if they were coming in off of Knights, coming into the building, pulling down, then backing up. The solid waste area is shown there as that gray rectangle and that white rectangle kind of by those two cars. Can you
Yes.
see that? Okay, so that's the loading and the solid waste. So it's gonna depend what they have in there. I'm assuming it's a compactor, and then they're gonna pull it, and typically, they would need the maneuvering space, which is what looks like are those other two arrows, but until we see the auto turn, we can't tell you yet if that works, but it will be required to work, or they will be required to make an adjustment of that ground floor plan in order to have a serviceable solid waste area to the city standards.
If it's going to go to the council, I'll save any other comments on that. I guess I only add one other thing. Since you were talking about height and so forth, is there a backup? This is based on 10 stories, am I correct? Is there a backup plan that for, say, 8 stories or 6 stories?
I don't believe so, but you can answer that. No.
We're on Plan C at this point.
The other buildings,
Pardon me?
when they were showing the heights of the other buildings, I just wondered if there was also a backup plan, rather than 10 stories that say there's 7 stories or 8 stories.
No, I understand, but my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, this is it. This is the shortest building that makes economic sense. There's no other backup plan. Sir, you're up.
Two questions. One, is it all valet parking, or guests be allowed to park their own vehicles? And two, if you're traveling westbound on Knights Run, is there currently a cutoff that would allow vehicles to turn into that space, make a left-hand turn on Knights Run into that, the hotel entrance?
Hello, good afternoon. So the first question is, well, related regarding the turn on the median. There is currently no cut. So I live there, so I know that if I wanted to go into the gym, I have to take a left on that intersection and go either do a U-turn or go down. So there's no curb cut.
So would you apply for a cutoff, or people have to come down, make a U-turn and come into the hotel?
That is a traffic question. It's not something that pertains to my exact
I
property.
see.
And will people be allowed to park their own vehicles, or is it going to be valet?
Our intention is it's a full valet. Given the high quality of the hotel, it's going to be valet only.
I just want to make a correction. So we're talking about a median, and there's no median cut. That's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Good afternoon. For the record, Julia Mandel with the law firm of Ray Robinson, and I'm representing the South Neighborhood Association, along with David Smoker, who is also here, as you can see. Just having seen this plan, I'm not really in the position to give any kind of position of the South Neighborhood Association, and would make a request that maybe as you submit those plans directly to the city, you also can give those to me so I can submit those to the actual association for them to take whatever action they feel is appropriate for their feelings on the changes that you've made. So I understand the plan. You're reducing it to 10 stories at the 109 with the additional mechanical areas that will go up to 120. Let me just make this statement, though. I think Kate did a really good job expressing the concerns of City Council, and that were the concerns of us, and they relate to the entry points that Ms. Feely made a request to get more information on, and the scale and the height. So I think those issues still remain on the table for discussion. But I did want to ask a question about the signage that you discussed. Is that intended to be a requirement of the site plan as a condition? Or is that something that's just going to be, we'll do our best to make that happen? And I think that that's something that needs to be identified as to what is going to be on the site plan as it relates to those issues. So that we're clear going forward what is and what is not on the plan. I just think it's important that if there's going to be commitments made, and those are going to be something that's going to be stated, that they need to be a part of the plan. The final thing I did want to mention is the parking issue, because Mr. Kremer made a statement about previous discussions as it related to parking and not wanting as much parking versus the plan that had no waivers versus this plan that now has a parking waiver. I think it is important to note for y'all, and I think it's just important to say on the record, that the original 15-story plan was overparked by, I think, about 40 spaces. And there was a lot of concerns and questions at that time as to whether or not those additional spaces were necessary for the hotel, or if they were being used for other reasons. I don't want to leave an impression that there was any interest on the part of the neighborhood association, from what I've heard, that they would have no issue or problem with reducing that parking. I think that that is not the position that the South Neighborhood Association has taken. I think that they raised an issue with the first plan. That was not the plan that went to City Council, so I think that's kind of beyond the scope of our conversation, but it is important to note that that in fact happened. I appreciate that you allowed us to participate, and I'd like a better opportunity to review this plan with the Neighborhood Association. I cannot say at this time, and not in a position to say at this time, whether or not it would resolve any of the concerns that they have, but I do think that the concerns, as I said, Ms. Wells had raised at the beginning, remain the concerns of the neighborhood, which is the scale, of any structure that goes in that location, how it's going to function, what it is going to look like, how it's going to change the nature of this location, as well as the entry points into the building and the concerns about how that interacts with the entry point into the South Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Good afternoon. Dave Smolker. I've been retained by the South Neighborhood Association as their litigation counsel. And I'm the new guy on the block. I'm learning about the facts that are associated with this particular case and the issues. I would echo what Julia Mandel just said. My initial impression, and I've been representing developers for many, many years, and I was a former city planner, is that this particular structure's size, bulk, and height is really kind of out of character of the area in which it's being located. And I think that's my first impression, just by looking at it. And I think that is underscored by the city council's concern. So I think that still would be an issue in my mind. Whether it's still an issue in the association's mind remains to be seen. I also think that I understand that there has been a Burt Harris damage claim that's been made for $6 million. So I'm assuming that that's the difference between being able to have the hotel that you wish to have versus some other existing use. And the magistrate did say that the 10 stories is essentially the minimum height or number of stories for an economic hotel use on the property. I think an issue that should be looked at is, what are the economics here? In the final analysis, we all know that developers are driven by economics, and they should be. It's about making a profit. The question that I would want to know is how many stories do you really need in order to get a market rate of return on a hotel in this location? Because if you can get a market rate of return on a hotel in this location that's fewer stories, to me, that is a step in the right direction. I mean, I'm not in a position to commit on behalf of the association, but I think that's an inquiry that probably should be made. And we certainly would hope that you would be open to having that discussion, because that could really, in the final analysis, make a difference. So with that, I'll pass the baton.
Good afternoon. I'm Guy Van Balen. I'm the Vice President of the South Neighborhood Association, as well as President of Harborside Homeowners Association within Harbor Island. One of the questions I have, and that's for the magistrate at this point, is this considered some type of binding mediation because you indicated that you were going to do an order, and that concerned me because what I heard from the city was that this is something conceptually that they may bring to the city council, but it isn't something that they should be mandated to.
Right.
And so when you said an order, I got concerned about what that meant.
It just really documents the results of this process.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. The second thing is, early on in this meeting today, the city announced the two areas of why the city council denied the May 12th hearing. I didn't hear anything today from the city attorneys just a few moments ago that really resolved any of those two issues, so I am somewhat concerned that the city attorneys now are willing to propose this to the city for consideration. Obviously, those two issues that were enumerated, one was the compatibility issues with those existing south of the Knights Avenue, as well as the failure for it to promote development in that surrounding area. So that is something I want city attorneys to take notice of when they discuss this with the city council. The biggest issue, one of the biggest issues that's been enunciated not just today, but certainly over the last number of hearings that we've all been at, is the issue of traffic. And nothing that was proposed by the developer today resolves any of those things. And I just want to, again, for the benefit of both sides, kind of highlight some of those things. Knight's Run is did. It never went down. Knight's Run is the main egress and ingress road for Harbor Island, for the most part, other than getting in and on with the bridges. Everyone who lives even north of Knight's Run comes down one of those two avenues, hits Knight's Run, and goes into the various high-rises and other buildings and stuff. So by impeding that, and especially all you have to do is go out there anytime, either morning or in the afternoon, starting at 3 o'clock. You'll see the amount of traffic that's coming down that road. In addition, you have trucks that service the developers' point slates there that are parking along the bridge and things of that sort. So to tie up more traffic on Knight's Run in front of the hotel is going to be really a big problem. Additionally, if you have trucks coming and servicing, are they going to park on Knight's Run and again handicap various cars that are coming around there? Or are they going to somehow park or double park by the entrance for Harbor Island Athletic Club, which is shown on the bottom of that chart? That's going to be a major mess. Well, thank you. When the cars are coming down Harbor Island Boulevard over the bridge and towards the gates and now towards this proposed hotel, there is an island. There's a barrier on that road. And so what a lot of people do is obviously go past that and turn into the athletic club. But obviously here, with people making the mistake, there's going to be constant U-turns, as I think one earlier person mentioned, that's going to happen. And if you have trucks doing the same, it's going to be a mess. This couldn't be the worst place for a large building of any sort on that point, because the traffic there is going to be horrible. It's going to impede the ability of Harbor Island Athletic Club, the gates that go into the rest of the south neighborhood area, as well as Knight's Run. So those are things that we have to consider. Additionally, with construction, and this is something that they couldn't answer on May 12th, the developer, is we see this all over Tampa. When you're building a structure, you're obviously impeding some of the public roads in order for a period of whatever time the construction is. We see it on Bayshore now, and that's a mess. We see it all over. And so you're going to obviously impede both Knight's Run and potentially Harbor Island Boulevard during the construction period, which I believe they said would last maybe upwards of 18 months, give or take, which would be a horrible situation for us and not something that I would consider temporary when you're dealing with an 18-month period with regard to that. You also have that area serviced by school buses and the like. It will be a total mess, potentially devalue the properties. And I would say to the city, this is a huge tax base in terms of revenue for the city. You don't want to impede or impair the tax rate and by lowering values in that area. Thank you.
Hello, Vernon Ellinger, President of Central Pay, HOA, and member of SNA board by disclosure. The design has changed. Some things haven't changed. The towers are still not next door. They're not adjacent. They're across a 4-lane boulevard, Knight's Run. You actually are proposing something that's out of context with what's anywhere near that spot. And we keep talking about the original plan, and I believe that this development is relying on technicalities in the original plan. Well, the original plan, to my knowledge, had a massive commercial facility at the very point, the very bottom of the southern island, and that's why Beneficial Drive is like a boulevard. It's way over capacity for what it's being used for, because there was going to be a massive commercial development at the southern point of the island. And the organic growth on Harbor Island has not followed that plan. And City Council got it right by saying the organic growth didn't follow the technicalities of the plan, so we're not going to allow you to exploit technicalities in the plan to put something that doesn't fit into the neighborhood. And if you're going to build an airplane now, you don't go back to the Wright brothers' Kitty Hawk Flyer plans. If you're going to develop something here, you don't go back to an obsolete, not as developed plan. So I thank the city council and city attorney. I hope that you actually consider the way the plan has played out as opposed to technicalities within the plan when this goes back. Secondly, the traffic study, no one with any knowledge of traffic has done anything other than laugh at this study. It is not realistic, and I don't know how it ever got past the competent people, supposedly competent people who reviewed it and said to city council, it's okay. City council saw through that as well. So those are my comments. I really think we need to look at not exploiting technicalities, but fitting in with the organic growth of Harbour Island and the way it has worked and the way this draw the line at Knight's Run plays out. You got to draw the line between high-rise commercial intensity and lower-rise residential and recreational. Draw the line. It's obvious where it needs to be, not where it's proposed, but where it exists, which is Knight's Run.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kathleen Heidi. I've lived at Harbour Island for 26 years. I live in Seddon Cove, which is directly across from the proposed hotel, and I was president of the board of Seddon Cove for many years. My neighbors have brought out some really excellent points, which I would have also addressed. So I'll say very briefly, I'm certainly concerned about the traffic, and I've lived through development of the island. When I moved on, there were just a few communities, and I've seen through good planning that we have been able to grow and grow responsibly. I'm very concerned about what's being proposed. Now, I do appreciate that Mr. Shaw and his group have in fact gone back and made, tweaked it and made, definitely made changes. What I'm concerned about, and I'll go back to Ms. Wells there, where she said where the initial concerns were the compatibility of the proposed hotel and the south of the gates. Now, I've been really concentrating on south of the gates because I've lived there and I've seen the development. But I do want to just bring out, and Vernon just did this as well, it affects people north of the gate because they will have to live with the traffic and the disruption from the building of it. Plus, and my area, some of you know, is in the area of criminology, criminal justice, and it concerns me that with hotels, a hotel right there on the residential area, it also brings in the opportunity for crime, whether it's deliberate, intentional, or whether it's a byproduct of drinking and partying. So that concern has not been raised, and I'd like to just put it out there. I do want to say that the presentation done, I think, was very good in saying how the developer has seen this in the view that it's fitting into the island. However, what I noticed is that you were looking primarily at what is north of the gates, meaning the large-scale apartments and condos. We don't have that. Now, you've mentioned two buildings. That's Harbour Court. That's one. And I would invite the city council to come visit it. And I will let Mr. Kramer, if you let me know when you want to come, I will certainly meet you and I will have a golf cart and we will tour the island so you can see the character of the development, because I think that's very, very important. So I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm going to do this, and you can tell me, the magistrate, Mr. Steady, if it's inappropriate. But the developer's been very good in answering questions right here for as we've spoken, and I think has answered them honestly, candidly. But I'd like to ask the city, and I'd like to ask Ms. Wells, though I'm open to anyone else answering it. Ms. Wells, when you started, you very nicely explained, and I was at the May 12th meeting, so I understood what you were saying, that the city council decision, as some of my neighbors have represented, was based on the fact of compatibility with the neighborhood. And I understand that because I was there, and anybody here knows what the south neighborhood looks like and what the north neighborhood looks like. So here is my question, Ms. Wells, for you. With all due respect, and I don't mean it to be confrontive, but I understand you met with the developer and the developer's team, and you believe, apparently, the city, that the developers have responded to the issue, I assume, of compatibility. So with all due respect, I'm just asking, because I really want to understand, I'm not being confrontive, honestly, how do you see the tweaking of basically, as I heard, bringing down, they've reduced the guest levels to 5 from whatever it was, 7 or 8, and they've reduced the parking levels by a few. So how do you see, with those reductions that were done by the developer and his team, as responsive to the compatibility of the neighborhood and responding to the city's concern? Because obviously you think there's enough there to, at this point, approach the city with this plan.
Well, if I could, because you asked, is it appropriate? So let
Yes,
me-
okay, yes, I did ask Mr. Stady.
First, I want to hear from everyone, but I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity too. So I'm trying to let everyone say their piece. But Kate isn't the only person for the city. She's not, there's a whole staff that's
No, I
dealing with
understood
this.
that.
So,
Yes.
and the process is basically you can comment on it, but it's not a question and answer for the city. I mean, you can certainly ask it for them, but I don't think it's fair, Kate, for you to be asked that question. I mean, it's
I
the staff.
appreciate that.
Right. But
Just one
go
thing,
ahead.
though, I wanted to clarify, there was a misstatement. There's an impression that the city has met with the developer and that we worked on this. You kind of started your question with that premise. We've not met with the developer. This is the first time we're meeting to look at this proposed plan.
Right, I'm
So-
sorry, I did understand that.
Yeah, so there was no, this is, what you see before you has not been a collaborative effort between the
Right.
city and the developer than to present today. So that's the initial premise. You know, if, after everyone has spoken, we want to talk about compatibility and what the city is looking at, I'm happy to, and with Abby's help, we can address that and explain why we're supportive of this. But I just wanted to clarify that because I don't want residents on Harbour Island thinking that the two parties to this mediation met prior to the mediation.
Well,
Right,
so-
and I
so
appreciate
let me
the-
interrupt.
Yeah.
So, Kate, it's fine with me. Why don't we finish the comments, and then if you want to address the compatibility issue, which you're asking about, let's have the city do that.
Sure,
All right,
and
so-
I just want to state one
Go
last
ahead.
thing, Mr.
Go ahead.
Stady. I did not think that you had met previously. I just met when, I assumed you went into the room with the mediation.
No.
Oh, you did not? Then I'm sorry. Then that was, I'm glad you clarified, because I thought you did. So your team met and their team met?
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank
Right.
you for the clarification.
Right, I go between the two. That's
Okay.
what my role is. Okay, and by the way, I want you to have the opportunity, but if they've already said it, you might just want to reiterate what, so go ahead, but you have your opportunity.
Sure. Deborah Ellinger. I'm a resident in Saint-Tropez. And I'm actually, private equity is my business, so I understand what Punit is going through, and I understand the need for economic return on this property. But I actually believe that there are other economic uses that they may not generate private equity type returns, but there are alternatives here. I would like to, though, specifically address my comments to the group that's representing the city. And I do appreciate the summary of what the council had said, which has already been repeated, but about the pattern of development around south of Knights Run, and secondly, about the traffic. And I just want to make some additional points on each of those. First of all, south of Knights Run is, although there is a building there that's 7 or 8 stories, 7 or 8 residential stories is not the same as 7 or 8 or 10 commercial stories in terms of height and impact. So I wouldn't want you to think, I think it's important to make sure you're not comparing 7 or 8 residential stories to a commercial development like this. And re-emphasize that this is not adjacent to the other high-rise on Harbour Island. It is indeed, as a previous speaker said, across a substantial roadway. So that's the first point that the council had objected to, and I encouraged the city to take in that, and this has not changed that. On the traffic, and I should have added, I'm actually a litigator by training, and I'm very glad that as a group we've hired a litigation specialist, because this isn't, just like the developer may be suing you, we could be as well, which I hope doesn't happen. But I have the sense that the traffic study was very poorly done, was not up to date, may have been done during the pandemic, who knows. But it's so obviously wrong that I request that the city redo the traffic study. Consider Ubers, consider this flow here doesn't have a place for Ubers to sit around while they're waiting for people to show up. The Uber impact is not, in my opinion, is not properly assessed. And if you guys don't get that right, then, you know, people like me who are litigators are going to be facing different threats. I hate to put it that way. Back to being, you know, in private equity myself, I actually do accept that development needs to happen here. I think the issue is it needs to be a lower volume use. You know, initially, the developer had suggested it was going to be a, quote, boutique hotel. If this was 50 rooms, I think you might not be seeing as robust objection. So, you know, a 50-room boutique hotel is very different from what we're looking at here. A 3 or 4 story office building is very different from what you're looking here. And so I just think it's critical for you to consider, as you consider development, a 10-story hotel with a ton of rooms in it is not the answer. Thank you.
Christy Winson, I live in Harbor Bay. You know, I appreciate the changes to this and concur with everyone who's spoken before me that a hotel is not compatible with this side of Knights Run. You know, it is smaller, it's just, I'm sorry, it's still not compatible. Meetings we've had with them, yes, they've tried to meet with us. Our first meeting, we weren't even able to speak. The second meeting was an uproar at the Marriott. They talk about luxury, boutique. I'm an interior designer. This is not boutique. It doesn't fall in the criteria. It's not luxury. Marriott, this is one of their lowest end hotels. And we live on Harbour Island, a luxurious area. Again, it doesn't meet the compatibility. I'll save the rest of my comments for the next meeting.
Thank you. My name is V. Bear, and I'm a resident of Harbor Court. And I want to thank the team, Liberty Group's team, for listening to us. But there's more that you can listen to. And Punit, like you, we feel passionate about the island, which is why meetings like this are taking place. And appreciate the consideration that you're being given, or that you are giving us. Wish it had happened earlier, because like all of my neighbors here, I believe that if you had designed something attractive and truly like a boutique hotel, it would have been better received. Now, I do have some questions, and I believe for Mickey to begin with, the Google Earth renditions, or maybe it's for Mr. Kramer, the Google renderings that you showed, the original building seemed to be a brick building, or at least have a brick facade on it. And then when you showed the new rendering, it was that incompatible architecture, sorry for Harbor Island, showing the gray concrete steel glass monolith. What's on the outside of the hotel? Is it brick? Red brick, preferably to go with what's there?
We haven't finalized the exact materials at this time. We do know that it's going to be some stone material down on, especially around the parking garage level. So we're utilizing stone that is used in other areas of Harbor Island at that point in time. We're still debating on how we will, the tower portion of it, where the guest rooms are, on what those materials will be there, the glass that'll be used on that at this time. So we haven't finalized those materials, but we do know we're going to use stone, some kind of stone material on those lower levels where you're going to have the interaction with the pedestrians and really your vision corridor as you're driving in your car.
Well, something to be more compatible with the architectural integrity of the island would be appreciated. You know, this building would definitely set a precedent for the development that goes on the south side of Knights Run Avenue. And that's a great concern, because you start building something really taller, we're going to end up with a concrete canyon on Knights Run Avenue. Don't want that happening. Definitely don't. I'm not opposed to a hotel. I'm opposed to what's being proposed because it would establish that precedent. Now, a lot has been said about the traffic, and I went online to try and see what information is out there in the public for traffic, and I believe the most recent traffic study report was done in 2015. Would the city happen to know? Is that correct? Okay, well, that's the most recent that I was able to find. Okay. I don't know about the application because I couldn't get into that. I couldn't dig that deeply. I just asked for MPO, City of Tampa traffic transportation studies, and the most recent report was 2015. Now, if that's the case, in the last 7 years, the development that has occurred, not just on Water Street, but in downtown Tampa and definitely on Harbour Island, would have an impact on traffic. And I agree with some of my neighbors that a more recent and updated traffic study needs to be done to get to the bottom of what the impact of this hotel would be. Speaking of traffic, there was some discussion about signage, and I'd really like to see what would that signage look like. And early on in some of the discussions that were held about this, there was some mention made that, gee, someday we might even need a traffic light at Knights Run and, well, Harbour Island Boulevard, sorry. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about what would the treatment be of the levels that the garage would be on. Initially, I believe it was some sort of plantings or something like that, which I know in other areas those plants die and it begins looking unsightly. So I'd really like to know what's that really going to look like. A lot of details are really lacking, but the main thing is the precedent that this would set, because we don't want a concrete canyon on Knights Run Avenue. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Curtis. While we're talking about canyons, there are a couple of mischaracterizations I thought that were really unfair and inaccurate. But there was a reference to a canyon, that Knights Run being a canyon of towers. It's not a canyon of towers. All the towers are on the north side of that road. If this proposal goes through, it will be a canyon of towers, but it is not currently. Secondly, there's a comparison today, and the last time there was a comparison to Channelside. Today, there was a comparison to Bayshore Boulevard. Those towers are condo towers, and they are located in neighborhoods with ample traffic options to get in and out of those areas. Your proposal is a hotel on an island with limited access, so I really felt like those comparisons were inappropriate. But my biggest concern remains, and it's unaddressed, is the service vehicle access. For us, in terms of the users that we all travel that way every single day, That's the deal killer to me, and it has not been addressed. If I may I step up to the?
Sure.
Okay. This is a service vehicle access. I've been asking this since the beginning, since your first meeting. This is Harbour Island Boulevard. The gate is here. The gate backs up already a lot. Currently, our service vehicles coming to our homes cannot line up there. They aren't allowed. They have to go to the other gate. They have to go to the east gate. You know why? Because it's a cluster, you know what. So what we're going to do is we're going to allow this hotel to allow their service vehicles to get in line with our guests and cut through traffic and, by the way, obstruct access to the athletic club as well to get in here. This is, to me, the biggest concern. It's not been addressed, and for some reason, when you did your presentation today, you talked about all this and how you could get guests to go in here. Very little discussion about the service vehicles because it's not going to be just garbage. It's going to be foods, linens, recycling, garbage, any number of. It's not going to be one delivery or two deliveries a week. Let's face it. So that's my main concern. The compatibility issues have not been addressed, and I don't really see a whole lot change from the last time this was denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the people that just commented under the process basically have the right to comment, and I don't want to just open it up and then we hear a lot of the same comments because I think they've been clearly articulated. But who in the audience would like to comment, just so I have an understanding? All right. If I say those two, that's all I'm going to allow. So I don't want anyone else to get upset with me. Okay? So go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kendall. I'm in the Keys. The comment about Knights Run, everything driving in, that's where everyone's going to come in, pull in, come in this way. Punit said there's a median there. There's no way to physically do that right now. He said that's the city's traffic issue. It's not there, so be it. But it hasn't, you literally cannot turn left there. So it kind of null and voids the entire process unless that median is addressed and opened and removed. So some food for thought.
All right. Sir?
So my family's new to Harbour Island. We moved here about a year ago, but as I've talked to some of their people around here, most of the concerns have been addressed by the South Neighborhood Association. Well, I live in Parkcrest, and we're on the north side of the island. And one of my concerns is that the representation that was made of Harbour Island pretty much negated or at least ignored the fact that virtually the entire north end of the island is residential. The presentation made it appear that there's all of this ample opportunity for development and that this location is not the only place on the island that they could still develop. That's not true. Except for a commercial office building and some shops and a couple of restaurants, it's all residential. And that's probably 99% of the entire island. So you've got the Westin Hotel and you've got Jackson's and American Social and that part, which is really separated from the rest of the island by Harbour Island Boulevard. It's completely a segregated area from everything else. But we on the north side of the island, in the condos and the apartments, we've got a lot of concern about this as well because the traffic affects us directly. My unit in Parkcrest looks directly out over the channel, and the Harbour Island Boulevard is right there. So we are going to see all this traffic for the next year and a half or so, all this construction, not to mention the massive traffic backup that's there already. So they need to really revise the presentation to show that the island is not, there's not that much development available there, except for this and the and the athletic club, I mean, that's really about the only spots that are left. So they need to take that into consideration, that this island is mostly residential. Whether it was designed that way from the get-go when it was first planned out, it's not the case now. That's the way it is. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right.
Thank you.
Understood. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Sir, if I recognize you, I recognize everybody.
I think important clarifying question.
All right, if I recognize this gentleman, I'm not going to recognize anyone else, just so it's clear. But it's a quick comment. Quick comment.
For Ms. Wells, I hope this was not a Freudian slip, but you said, and I quote, "That's why we're supportive of this." And I think you meant that's why you're supportive of taking it back, not supportive of the project. So if anyone heard that and said, they could say, the people from the city are supportive of the project, but what you mean is supportive of merely taking it back to council.
Thank you for that clarification, yes. That's why, today we're not authorized to agree to anything. This is a decision only city council can make. So we're supportive of bringing the concept back to city council for consideration during a noticed public hearing.
But again, further clarification, but staff makes recommendations to city council, which could say consistent with the comp plan. So it's a little bit of verbiage here, because the staff is still going to say consistent with the comp plan, consistent with it, which is, so don't be caught off guard. And my order says supportive when I issue this order that's non-binding. So I don't want anyone to be caught off guard. It's a little bit of a nuance there. What?
They did not say support. They said
It'll be, hold on, I want to be careful with my words. Staff reports will still say consistent with the comprehensive plan. The typical staff reports will still be provided to city council. However, those are usually, see if anyone disagrees with me. Doesn't say support, but it's still going to have affirmative staff reports, comprehensive plan consistency with otherwise, let the city speak. Go ahead. Clarify so that you guys say it.
Typically, in a FLUDRA proceeding such as this, when this new proposal will go back through the Development Review Committee, it will receive a review.
Right.
And then a staff report will be prepared based on the new site plan and whatever is out there. Like right now with the solid waste, I can't tell you,
Right.
what their
Understood.
finding is going to be. We make findings of consistency or inconsistency
Right.
with the code. So we would do another staff report based on the new proposal, and that staff report would be provided to city council at the time of the hearing on this proposal.
Sir, and again, all they said was they conceptually, and that they would bring it. I don't want for you to say in potential orders, sir, that they were supportive, but it's not a fair assessment of what they said. Number one. Number two.
My order will say I'm supportive. It won't say.
Thank you. And then the second thing is, I know they were talking about wanting to talk about how they think it meets those things. Given that this is ongoing litigation, I would ask the city not to talk about that today. This is mediation only, and obviously save that for their discussions with city council, and then at that hearing not give their reasons today for why they think it meets those two things, because that's a legal issue that's currently under litigation.
Well, Kate, one person asked you to talk about compatibility. Another individual says you shouldn't. It's up to the city at this point. I think we're finishing up, and I don't know if anything's going to change with where to further discuss this, frankly. So I defer to you on how do you want to handle this. Well, let me make a suggestion.
Let's defer to city council.
I suggest we move forward today. I think we can resolve, we can move forward. Jake, you can have last word. Go ahead.
Can I just respond to the traffic analysis
Sure.
question real quick?
Yep, of course.
So, planned developments, when they are of a certain intensity, are required their own traffic analysis when they come in for application for rezoning. A transportation analysis was provided with this application in 2021. And that would have, there's a methodology to that. They meet with the transportation department. A methodology is developed on what roads they're going to count, what traffic they're going to count, from what period to what period they're going to count. And that methodology is agreed upon by the city and the applicant, and then the actual analysis is conducted, and then that analysis is provided in a written form as part of the application, and that is online as submitted with this application in '21. This happens throughout the entire city. So, yes, ma'am.
And confirm then that it was done during the pandemic, is that right?
2021.
So it may not, I get the request is
I
you
mean,
guys redo it.
Typically, I understand what the request is. Typically, our transportation division will not let you run an analysis during the middle of summer because school's not in. So, I mean, they're normally mindful of the conditions that they are trying to count. So I'm not the transportation engineer on this, and I don't want to speak to that. I did want to say, though, that there is a current analysis that was provided with this application, and that is in for public review. So if you want to review that or have someone else and you feel that there's something missing there, I mean, then that could be discussed.
Thanks, Abby. Go ahead. Jake, did you have something?
Based on some of the comments, we would like to have a brief breakout. I mean, I don't want this to drag on, but we'd just like to caucus and talk about some of the comments and provide some final feedback before we leave.
Okay. All right, so how long do you want to do that for?
Come back at 4,
Okay, so
and then everybody can
is
walk
this
home
where
or-
you're going to talk, but you don't necessarily need any input from the city, or you may?
We may. I don't know
Okay.
yet.
All right, then we're gonna take a break till 4 o'clock.